The first blow rattled the wooden door so hard that the hinges screamed. A second came like thunder, then a third, pounding in a steady, furious rhythm that shook the old bungalow to its bones. "Daddy, stop!" Amara cried, her voice cracking. Inside the cramped sitting room, Jack swung the heavy wooden pestle again, slamming it into the floor in front of the door. Dust rose in tiny clouds. The walls trembled. Bottles of oil on the small altar in the corner clinked against each other. "Say it," he shouted, chest heaving. "Say the words." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched a string of warm brown beads to her chest. I can't remember, you don't have time to forget," he roared, sweat gleaming on his forehead. "When it comes, it won't wait for you to remember. Say the words." Outside, the neighbors were already gathering in the dark, December wind whipping their clothes. A dog barked non-stop. Somewhere, a baby wailed. People whispered. "Every night it's pounding, shouting, crying," one woman muttered. "One day, we'll come and see that man has killed that girl." From the cracked window, the shadows of faces pressed closer, peeking through curtains. Another violent slam. This time it was the wall. Czech pushed Amara backwards, forcing her to stand in the center of a chalk-drawn circle on the tiled floor. The circle was lined with salt, red powder, and strange symbols, some fresh, some smudged from her shaking feet. "Don't step out," he snapped. "Do you hear me? No matter what you hear, you stay inside." Her voice came out small. "Daddy, I'm scared." "You should be," he answered without softness. "Fear will keep you alive tonight." He lifted the pestle again and hammered it into the ground on the edge of the circle. The pounding echoed through the night like a ritual drum. From outside, it sounded like something else entirely. Someone dialed the police. 3 days earlier, there had been no pounding. No chalk circles. Just a girl trying to study for exams and a father who wouldn't let her forget the dead. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the heat sat heavily over the small street like a warm blanket. Amara sat at the dining table, textbooks open, highlighter uncapped, hand under her chin. The fan spun above her, squeaking with every turn. She tried to focus on the paragraph about cell division, but her eyes kept drifting to the framed photograph on the wall. Her mother, smiling, head tied in a bright wrapper, eyes full of life that no longer existed. "Stop staring at the dead," Chike's voice said quietly behind her. She turned quickly. "I wasn't, you were," he said, moving to stand beside the table. "You always do when you're anxious." She wanted to argue but didn't. He knew her too well. "I just miss her," she said instead. "We both do," he replied. His voice carried a tired weight, like someone who hadn't slept properly in months. Maybe years. He looked older than his 42 years. His broad shoulders were still there, the remnant of his days as a local boxer, but his eyes were different now. Sharper. Constantly watching shadows, listening to silence, scanning corners. As if something invisible lived at the edge of his vision. "Your exams will soon be over," he said. "You'll get that admission. Your mother would have been proud." "Would have been," Amara repeated softly. The words cut. He pulled out the chair opposite her. "On Saturday you're distracted." "What is it?" "Everyone is traveling for Christmas already," she said. "Joy's family left yesterday. Ton said they are going next week. Even Madam Nkechi has gone to the village. It will just be the two of us left soon." "And," he asked. "And I want us to travel too," she said, voice firming up. "Let's go to the village this year. I'm tired of spending Christmas in this house like we're hiding." He held her gaze for a long moment. "We are hiding," he said finally. She scoffed. "From who?" "Daddy." "It's been 4 years. People lose their wives every day. People move on." His jaw clenched. "Is that what you think happened?" That your mother just died. Her eyes dropped to the table. She had heard the whispers. The stories the aunties told. The official explanation was a sudden illness that took her in one night. But she'd heard the words whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. Attack. Night thing. Spiritual. Daddy, I don't know what happened, she said quietly. I only know she's gone and you've been different since then. Overprotective, always on edge, always praying like something is chasing you. And me. Not something, he said, leaning forward. Someone. She swallowed. You've said this before. I keep saying it until you understand, he replied. His voice dropped lower, as if someone might be listening. Your mother didn't just die. That night, something came. I felt it. I heard it. It wasn't human. Daddy, she shifted in her chair, uncomfortable. You didn't see what I saw, he continued, eyes distant as memory dragged him somewhere else. The way the air froze. The way her breath left, like someone was sucking it out. The shadows that moved on their own. The whisper in my ear that night. Amora rubbed her arms, goosebumps rising despite the heat. You never told me there was a whisper. He hesitated. It said, one taken. One left. His fingers drummed on the table, slow and deliberate. That was the promise. It took your mother that night. And it promised it would come back for the other. Her chest tightened. The other, you, he said. Silence fell between them like a third person at the table. She laughed, but it came out shaky. Daddy, please. Maybe you were just dreaming. Hallucinating, he cut in. I've tried to convince myself of that too. But every December since then, the signs repeat. Same cold. Same smell. Same presence. You're just connecting things that aren't connected, she protested, even as fear pricked her spine. You see what you want to see. He watched her carefully. Have you noticed how sometimes the house feels colder at night, even when NEPA hasn't brought light and the fan isn't on? That's just harmattan, she said. And the way the bulbs flicker only at 2:13 a.m. She paused. You set alarm to check bulb time now. I don't need alarm, he replied. It wakes me. Daddy, please, she said again, voice thin now. Can we not talk about this? I wish we didn't have to, he said. But I got a sign this morning. Stronger than the others. She frowned. What sign? Instead of answering, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table and nodded at it. Open it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unfolded it. The paper was dirty, like it had been stepped on. The message was short, written in an uneven scrawl. One taken. One left. December doesn't forget. She stared. Who wrote this? I found it tucked under the front door this morning, he said. No footprint. No knock. I opened the door and it was just there. Maybe it was some stupid child playing pranks, she said, but the words felt weak. You know any child who knows that phrase? He asked quietly. Her throat went dry. No, he leaned forward. Amora, listen to me. I've ignored the smaller signs for 3 years. I told myself maybe it was my grief, my guilt, my imagination. But this, he tapped the paper. This is deliberate. It means it's close. And if it's close, we can't travel. We can't pretend. We prepare. Prepare how? She asked. His answer came without hesitation. I train you. For what? To fight a ghost. The sarcasm slipped out before she could stop it. His eyes hardened. To survive. The training began that night. At first, she thought he was exaggerating. Overreacting. acting out. Years of bottled fear. But by the third day, her body ached, her voice was hoarse, and she knew this was more than paranoia. He woke her by 4:30 a.m. with a sharp knock on the door. "Up," he said. "Now." She dragged herself out of bed, eyes heavy. "Daddy, please. I have school." "You won't have school if you're dead," he replied coldly. "Shoes on." We run. They ran the empty streets in the cold air, their breaths visible in the early Harmattan morning. He set a pace faster than she thought he could manage. His boxer roots resurfaced with every stride. "Daddy, slow down," she panted. "You think it will slow down for you," he threw over his shoulder. "Run." By the time they got back, her legs felt like jelly. But the morning had only started. Inside the house, he had cleared the sitting room. The sofa was pushed against the wall. The center of the room was open, save for a circle lightly sketched with chalk. "What's this?" she asked, sweat dripping down her face. "A boundary," he answered. "Protection. But only if you respect it." He made her stand in the circle, barefoot. "Rule number 1, he said. When it comes, you don't leave the circle. No matter what it says. No matter whose voice you hear." She shivered. "Whose voice I hear? It can sound like me. Like your mother. Like anyone," he said. "But if they're outside the circle, they're not real." Her eyes stung. "Even if it sounds like you. Especially if it sounds like me." The next part felt insane even as she did it. He taught her words, lines in a language she didn't know, syllables that tasted odd in her mouth. He made her repeat them until her tongue twisted, until she could say them in her sleep. "What does it mean?" she asked on the second day. "It's a refusal," he said. "A declaration of ownership. You say it to remind it that you don't belong to it." "Belong to what?" she pressed. He looked at the shadowy corner of the room for a second before answering. "The thing that thinks it has the right to finish what it started." By the third night, the neighbors had started talking. From outside, all they saw was a man and his daughter shouting strange words, pounding the floor, candles burning late, lights flickering. They heard the raised voices, the crashes when she failed an exercise and he knocked over a stool in frustration. "Every day now it's shouting," one woman told another at the shared fence. "That man is not normal. Since his wife died, his head has not been correct." "I saw the girl yesterday," another added. She looked tired. Eyes red. "Maybe he's beating her in the name of one training. You know how some men are," the first murmured. "One day we will hear story." The story they heard came sooner than they expected. On the fourth night, the air changed. Amora knew it the moment she stepped out of the bathroom. The house felt wrong. The air was heavier, like someone had added invisible weight to each breath. Her skin prickled. The hairs on the back of her neck rose. "Daddy," she called. "In here," his voice answered from the sitting room. She walked in and stopped. The circle on the floor was thicker now, red powder glowing faintly under the flickering bulb. 4 candles burned at the points of an invisible compass. The pestle lay on the floor beside him, and he was tightening the beads around his wrist. "You feel it?" he asked, not looking at her. She swallowed. "Feel what?" He raised his head slowly. "You feel it, Amora. Don't lie." She did. A deep hum just below hearing. A pressure behind her eyes. A cold that had nothing to do with the night breeze. "What is it?" she whispered. "It's close," he said simply. "Tonight may be the night." Her heart thudded. "Tonight." He got up and guided her to the circle. "In," he said. "We've practiced this. You know what to do." "What if it doesn't come?" she asked, clinging to the hope. "Then we trained." "For nothing," he said. And I'd be happy to waste all this time. But if it does come, and you're not ready, she stepped into the circle. What about you? She asked. Won't you stay in here with me? He shook his head. Someone has to hold the line. He placed a hand over his chest. Out there. Fear tightened her stomach. I don't want you to go. He smiled sadly. This is what fathers do. He pressed the beads into her hand. When I say, now, you start the words. Don't stop until your throat gives up. Even then, keep trying in your mind. Do you hear me? Daddy, do you hear me? He repeated, voice sharp. Yes. Say them once, he ordered. She closed her eyes. The strange syllables rolled out of her mouth, shaky at first, then firmer. By the time she finished, sweat dotted her forehead though the room was cold. He nodded. Good. Then the lights went off. Not gradually. Not flickering. They died in one clean, suffocating blink. The candles flickered violently but did not go out. Shadows jumped up the walls. From outside came the first howl of the wind, swirling dust along the quiet street. Clothes left on lines lifted and twisted like bodies. Dogs began barking in unison, then one by one their sounds cut abruptly, leaving a heavier silence. Daddy. Amara whispered. I'm here, he said, his voice coming from somewhere to her left. Don't move. A soft sound came from the corridor. Not footsteps. More like dragging. Something sliding along the wall. The air temperature dropped another few degrees. Her breath fogged in front of her. Now, Amora, his voice said quietly. She began to speak, the words tripping over each other as fear squeezed her chest. From outside the house, neighbors heard none of this. All they heard was pounding. The first blow against the wall shook the pictures. The second made one fall. Glass shattered. Jesus, someone shouted from a nearby compound. What is happening there? They've started again, another woman muttered. This is too much. Inside, the pounding wasn't random. Jack attacked the walls, the floor, the invisible spaces where the cold gathered most. He wasn't just striking blindly. He had learned over the years where it liked to press against the wall. Leave my house, he shouted, slamming the peso into the ground so hard the vibrations traveled into Amora's feet. You took one. You won't take the other. Not while I'm breathing. The drag along the corridor grew faster. Then it stopped just at the edge of the sitting room. Amora didn't look. She stared at the floor in front of her, at the chalk, at the grain in the tiles. Her lips moved faster now, words thick with tears. Something laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't high-pitched. It was soft. Amused. Like someone watching a child attempt a task far above their strength. You waited long, a voice whispered. Amora's knees almost gave out. That voice carried two tones at once, one low, one higher, both woven like threads around each other. It didn't seem to come from a mouth. It came from everywhere. Chaik lifted the peso, knuckles white. You're not welcome here. Still pretending this house belongs to you, the voice replied. How is my other gift? The girl. Amora squeezed her eyes shut and spoke faster. The words spilled out, the cadence like a drum. She's not yours, Chaik spat. The first one tasted like fear and fate, the voice said almost thoughtfully. This one smells like doubt. I will enjoy her. Amora. Chaik backed. Don't listen. Don't look up. Keep speaking. Two things happened at once. A cold pressure pressed against the edge of the circle, and outside, someone finally called the police. Inside, the candles flared, their flames stretching toward the ceiling. The chalk line at her feet glowed faintly. The pressure pressed harder, like a heavy hand pushing down. Step out, the voice cooed now, softer, closer to her ear than any human should be without touching. All this pain will stop. All this fear. Your father won't shout again. You'll see your mother. Her heart wrenched. For a split second, she saw her mother's face in her mind. Laughing. Calling her name. Amora, the voice whispered, now perfectly like her mother. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Her foot twitched, almost crossing the line. No. Jack roared, and the peso came down, slamming right at the boundary. The ground vibrated. Her foot jerked back as if someone had slapped it. The voice snarled. The air shook. Outside, blue and red lights appeared at the end of the street. The police truck bounced over potholes as it approached. Inside, the pounding intensified. Jack struck the walls in a frenzy now, each blow accompanied by a shout, a declaration, a name invoked. He swung like a man in the ring again, but his opponent wasn't visible. You are trespassing, he growled between breaths. She is not your prize. You will leave with nothing. Bold for someone who begged the last time, the voice hissed. Shall I remind you? The way you screamed her name. The way you cried on the floor. Amora squeezed her eyes tighter. The words she had memorized seemed to come from somewhere beyond her now. They poured out of her like a river, unbroken, urgent. You can't have her, she whispered between the strange syllables. You can't have me. The pressure around the circle intensified, like hands banging against glass. The candles bent, their flames horizontal, as if pushed by a storm from a direction that didn't exist. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. No pressure. No dragging. No laugh. Silence. Amora's voice faltered. Daddy. He panted, chest heaving. Keep going, he rasped. We are not done. Daddy, I think, the front door exploded inward. The wood didn't crack in the way doors normally give. It splintered outward, as if something had pushed it from inside and outside at the same time. The pieces flew across the room. One shard caught Jack's arm. He grunted, more from surprise than pain. Outside, the neighbors screamed. From their angle, they saw a door burst open, heard shouting, saw only flashes of candlelight and a girl standing in a strange circle while her father, bleeding, swung a stick at the empty air. That man has finally run mad, one man shouted. He wants to kill her with ritual. The police truck screeched to a halt. Two officers jumped down, hands on their weapons. Stay here, one said to the small crowd, who of course ignored him and pressed closer. Inside, the temperature dropped further. The edges of the doorway darkened, as if the darkness itself had become thicker, more solid. The candles flickered once, twice. And then, slowly, something like a shape formed near the door. It wasn't clear. Not like a person. More like a smudge where light refused to land. A distortion, like heat waves on a road, but made of cold. Amora's breath hitched. The words almost stopped. She forced them back to her lips. Jack stepped between the shape and the circle. Last warning, he said through clenched teeth. Leave. The thing moved without moving. 1 second it was near the doorway, the next it seemed closer, as if the space between had simply folded. A low sound vibrated the air. It wasn't a growl. It was older than that. You are late, it murmured. The time was 4 years ago. She was always mine. I just allowed you to borrow her. Jack bared his teeth. You took my wife. You will not take my daughter. You agreed, it replied calmly. His face twisted in pain. I was desperate. Amora's mind flashed to late-night arguments she remembered only as fragments. Her father shouting. Her mother crying. Words like a doctor, money, treatment. You begged, the voice reminded him. Spare my daughter. Take me. Take her instead. Let me keep one. Your own words. Do you remember how sweet your fear tasted that night? Amora's voice stumbled. Her father had bargained her life. Bargained her mother's. Daddy, she whispered. Is that true? He didn't turn. Keep speaking, Amora. Answer me, she cried, stepping dangerously close to the line. Do you want the full truth? The thing crooned. Ask him who opened the door for me the first time. The siren outside cut through the thick air. The officers rushed toward the entrance, guns drawn. Sir, one shouted from the shattered doorway. What is going on here? Step away from the girl. They couldn't see the shape. To them, there was only a wild-eyed man with a bloody arm, a teenage girl crying in a chalk circle, and candles casting long, strange shadows. Stay back. Chike snarled, not taking his eyes off the distortion. You don't understand, move, the officer barked. Now. The distortion paused, amused. More witnesses. More fear. Delicious. The air inside the house thickened. One of the officers hesitated, suddenly shivering. Ogre, you feel that? He whispered to his partner. His partner swallowed. Feel what? The first officer's hand trembled slightly on his gun. Something in his body screamed to step back. To leave. Inside the circle, Amora's knees gave out. She fell, hands catching on the cold tile. The beads around her wrist cut into her skin. Her throat burned. She gasped, words breaking. I can't. Daddy, I can't anymore. Yes, you can, he said, voice rough. Look at me. She lifted her head, eyes blurred with tears. In the candlelight, he looked smaller than he used to, the strong boxer reduced by years of guilt and fear. But his eyes held. I made a mistake, he said, voice shaking. I begged you to take your mother instead. I thought I could cheat it. Lose one, save one. I've hated myself every day since. But if I have to stand here and pound this floor until my heart stops to make sure it never touches you, I will. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Daddy, say the words, he whispered. Not for me. For you. Something in her hardened. A quiet, stubborn core that had always been there under the fear. She took a deep breath and forced the words out again. This time they came stronger, riding on anger and pain and a fierce desire to live on her own terms, not as someone's payment. The distortion shuddered. The candles flared white for a moment, then steadied. Enough, the voice snapped, the comb cracking for the first time. This is tiresome. It surged forward. The chalk line blazed like a ring of fire. The air above it shimmered as if something slammed into an invisible wall. The house shook. A crack ran up the far wall like a jagged line of lightning. Outside, the crowd stumbled as the ground heaved beneath their feet for a split second. What was that? Someone shouted. Earthquake, another yelled. There is no earthquake in this Lagos, a third snapped, making the sign of the cross. Inside, Chek grunted and dropped to one knee, breath knocked out of him. Blood soaked his sleeve now, but his eyes remained locked on the distortion. His voice came out in gasps. You have no claim, he said. Death cancelled. Says who? It hissed. He smiled weakly. Says the one greater than you. He placed his palm flat on the floor beside the circle. And says me. This house, this blood, this girl, are under new ownership. The words from Amora's mouth built to a crescendo. The room seemed to echo them back. For a moment, it felt like there were more voices speaking with her, unseen but present, filling the space with a sound that wasn't quite a shout and wasn't quite a song. The distortion twisted. Edges frayed. For the first time, it sounded pained. A horrible, grinding noise filled the room, like stones being crushed under immense weight. The candles blew out all at once. The only light now came from outside, flickering red and blue through the broken doorway. Then, with a final lurch, the pressure vanished. The air snapped back to normal. The cold retreated. The hum behind their ears faded. Silence. One of the officers exhaled shakily. What just happened?" he whispered. The second shook his head, eyes wide. "I don't know, but I'm writing transfer letter tomorrow." Amora collapsed fully now, sobbing. Her voice was gone. The beads hung loose around her wrist. The chalk circle was smudged where her hands had pressed, but still mostly intact. Jack dropped the pencil. It hit the floor with a dull thud. His legs gave way and he sat down heavily, back against the wall, chest rising and falling in ragged heaves. It was over. For now. The officers finally stepped inside fully. "Sir, you need to come with us," one said, the training kicking back in. "We got calls that you were harming your daughter." "We can't just." "I'm fine," Amara rasped, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "He didn't hurt me." "You call this fine?" the officer asked, gesturing at the broken door, the chalk, the candles, the blood. She met his eyes. There was something new in hers. Something older than her age. "If he hadn't done this," she said quietly, "you'd be carrying my body out instead." The officer opened his mouth, then closed it again. He glanced at his partner, who was staring at a corner of the room, face pale. "You see that?" the partner whispered. "See what?" the first asked. The second blinked, and whatever he thought he saw, an outline, a lingering shadow that seemed too intentional to be normal, was gone. "Nothing," he muttered. "Forget it." They took statements. They warned Jack about public disturbance. They made notes about a referral to social services that everyone knew would be lost in paperwork. Eventually, they left, and the crowd dispersed, buzzing with half-understood versions of the story that would spread like Hamilton fire. Inside, the house felt different. Lighter. As if someone had opened a window that had been jammed shut for years. Amora sat on the floor with her back against her father's. Neither spoke for a long time. Their breaths slowly synchronized. Finally, she said, "You bargained my life." "Yes," he answered. "No excuses. And I failed your mother. Twice. First by asking. Then by taking too long to fight my fear." She closed her eyes. "But tonight," he said, "I chose differently." She turned her head slightly, resting it on his shoulder. "You think it's really gone?" He was quiet for a moment. "I think it lost," he said. "It's not the same thing." She frowned. "What's the difference?" "When something is gone, you forget it," he said. "When something has lost, it remembers. It will try again. Somewhere. With someone." A chill walked down her spine. "So we are not safe." He squeezed her hand. "Safer than we were yesterday. And next time, we won't be ignorant. That's all anyone ever gets in this life, more knowledge than the last time something tried to break them." She let out a shaky laugh. "That's not very comforting." "It's honest," he replied. She breathed out slowly. "I'll take honest." Later that night, after she finally slept, really slept, without waking from dreams of her mother reaching from dark corners, Jack sat alone in the sitting room. The broken door was covered temporarily with a sheet. The candles were gone. The chalk washed away. The pencil leaned quietly in the corner. He picked up the folded paper with the message and stared at it for a long time. One taken. One left. December doesn't forget. He struck a match, watched the flame catch the corner, and dropped it into a metal bowl. The paper curled in on itself, blackening, words vanishing into ash. "Neither do I," he murmured. Across town, in a police station lit by buzzing fluorescent tubes, the officer who had thought he saw something sat at his desk, staring at the corner of the room. For a moment, just a moment, the air there seemed thicker. A slight distortion, like heat waves. A whisper swirled behind his ear, too faint to catch the words but clear enough to freeze his blood. He blinked hard, and it was gone. He shook his head, rubbed his face, and tried to focus on his report. Back in the small bungalow, Amara turned in her sleep and whispered a word from the strange chant, the syllables dancing out of her mouth with the ease of a language she hadn't known a week before. The night pressed against the patched doorway, curious, frustrated, calculating. Something had been denied its prize. And December, as the message had promised, didn't forget. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, like the video and comment what you learned from the story, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for captivating stories like this one. Remember to share this story with your friends and family too. Thanks for watching.